Hey guys, it's still winter, but that doesn't mean you can't do a little spring cleaning down there. Luckily, our partners at Manscaped specialize in products to make sure you're walking around town with a nice polar package.
The Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer is the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of the ceramic blade and advanced skin-safe technology, your snags on your snowballs will be reduced. The trimmer is also waterproof, so you can even trim in the shower. Manscaped Performance Package is the best buy of 2021. The Performance Package comes with the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 that we just mentioned, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, performance boxer briefs, and a fancy travel bag. This bundle also comes with the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner.
Keep your winter hygiene game strong, everyone. Right now, you can get 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using code CUPodcast. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com with code CUPodcast. Thanks to Manscaped for helping us maintain our winter wonderlands. All right, Ian, with the 30th anniversary of one of the most influential video games ever created,
Street Fighter 2. The World Warrior. So yeah, we recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of the entire Street Fighter
we did.
series.
We had party hats, Ian. We had a cake. I made a little Honda cake.
A few years ago, Capcom did the Street Fighter 30th anniversary collection. My friends were behind that. Did a lot of the work on the museum aspect of it. And while it is worth celebrating the 30th anniversary of the series, the truly important entry in the game, Part 2, yes, that is the one that has turned 30.
I know everyone wanted to get out their 2017 stuff and get their money. I'm respecting that. No one cares about the original Street Fighter game.
It's not a good game.
It was in my local pizzeria. I never played it.
I played it once. Game.
It was next to Outrun. I played Outrun. I didn't play Street Fighter at my pizzeria.
I remember seeing it in an arcade when I was younger because I remember the intro, but I don't think it was the pressure pad version.
Yeah, so the original, if you didn't know out there, the original Street Fighter 2 had pressure-sensitive buttons for the different levels of attacks.
There was a kick and a punch, and there was 3 pressure levels you could hit it at.
I've never seen that version, and they probably junked all of those because that's an awful idea.
I've only seen the pictures of it, but yeah, it's supposedly
we've only seen the 6-button ones.
Right, in real life. Yeah, it's apparently a miserable way to play the game.
That sounds awful, because everyone's like, what? Like, how do you control that consistently? You just don't.
You don't.
You lose.
You don't.
It's all fierce punches and kicks.
Right.
It's clunky, the original Street Fighter. There's some good ideas going for it, because before Street Fighter, there wasn't a lot of one-on-one fighting games. ER Kung Fu is one of those first ones. You had that lightsaber game I always forget the name of.
Warrior.
You have that. So there's not a huge amount of them. So you needed a Street Fighter to come in there and sort of Karate Champ.
You had them, but they weren't
few and far between, and they weren't perfected. They didn't perfect what do we want to do with this genre. So Street Fighter comes out in '87, and you have different characters from across the world. You only can play as Ken or Ryu, though, who have the same moves.
Yep.
You have your special moves, but it's clunky. The characters shuffle. They don't like walk. They didn't figure that out yet. The jumps are clunky. They're not smooth. The fights are clunky. The attacks are clunky. When you punch someone, they get knocked back immediately. There's no combo system yet. The Hadoukens and special moves take off way too much power, so you can walk through most of the game just by throwing Hadoukens. The AI is not there yet. It's not a good game, but you needed a starting point.
Yeah. So
when Street Fighter 2 came out 4 years later, almost no one heard of Street Fighter. I knew Fighting Street and connected that in my head because from the TurboGrafx 16, saying, "Oh, Fighting Street." That's that weird Street Fighter game. But Street Fighter 2 comes out and is a massive success. It's probably the first huge success of the late 80s, early 90s when I'm trying to think of these huge arcade games. I'm like, that could be it. That could be one that sort of get us into the silver age of arcades for the early mid 90s. It was a huge game.
Yep. Massive game, and one of those ones that you saw everywhere. I remember walking to the convenience store by my grandma's house, with $1 to get, candy, and then I could use the leftover quarters on the arcade games that were there.
Oh, nice, your grandma.
And it was a for the longest time, for years, it was a Street Fighter 2 machine. Probably the same one. I don't remember if they ever updated the board.
They didn't go to Classic or Championship. They just stayed for that.
But yeah, I clearly remember it. And you couldn't walk anywhere without seeing a Street Fighter 2 machine. It was probably the closest I'll have to remembering, when people talk about how Space Invaders kind of took Japan by storm, and there was like entire arcades that were just full of Space Invaders games.
Sure.
Not quite the same thing, but places that wouldn't normally have arcade games would throw a Street Fighter 2 machine in there. I remember there being a Street Fighter 2 machine in the back of one of the Kmarts my mom used to shop at, and kids would go there and play. Like, it was just anywhere you could put a Street Fighter 2 machine. Lots of places had them. Pizzerias, all those sorts of places.
And it's not like the look was unique, because like Final Fight came out a couple years before, and supposedly that was supposed to be Street Fighter 89. Thank God it wasn't the same name. Final Fight has the same colorful graphic style.
Yep.
Great. So like they were building something. Like they almost had to like invent Final Fight to do the proper Street Fighter game a couple years later. Like they had to get there in pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like if you combine the 2 out of 3 rounds, different world fighters, a Street Fighter, the original, with the look and feel and solid gameplay of Final Fight, mash them together, there's your Street Fighter 2.
Right.
You get there in pieces. And the characters are all notable. They all have great special moves. They're mostly well balanced. It's hard to use Zangief a little. He's a little bit too slow. They sped him up a little bit, but for the most part, they're pretty well balanced characters. For the most part, I could play most characters and do decently, knowing their movesets on the original Street Fighter 2. I can give you a run for your money with most of the characters. Maybe not Zangief. He's a little rough, but you work him in. The jumps are really rough with Zangief.
Yeah.
But most of the characters are E Honda and Blanca and Dalsim. You can use Dalsim and keep someone at bay with those long limbs, even though he's slower. I can beat you with Dalsim, on a good day. And of course, you have the four boss characters, which are fantastic. The combo system was found by accident in the game. So you have the first time you have this awesome combo system, for fighting games here, which is fantastic. The double KOs they put in there, sudden death rounds. It's an incredible game for the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible.
And really just kind of paved the way for everything that would come after it.
I mean, we would have had fighting games after this, but this became the model. Street Fighter became the model for it. It was the same year as Wolfenstein 3D, or was it a year later, Wolfenstein 3D?
Well, it's like we talked about with Nintendo. If Nintendo didn't exist, we would have gotten to video games at this point like we did, but the travel would have looked a lot different. The journey from Nintendo to where we're at now would look a lot different. Fighting games would look a lot different, I think, from then to now if Street Fighter hadn't been the big one.
Yeah, and that's a big 4 years in between the first and the sequel. You didn't have fighting games blowing up arcades in the late 80s. Right. It wasn't a thing. Street Fighter 2 had to kick the door down, then you have Mortal Kombat, then you have all the rest. You have Killer Instinct, you have all the other ones show up in the arcades, and that became the new maze game, how it was in the early 80s. It became fighting games.
Or like a first-person fighting games in arcades, first-person shooters on computers,
Correct.
maze games in early arcades. Yeah,
that became like the standard. When I first played Street Fighter 2, I believe it was one of those private pools. It could have been like the Elks Club. My grandfather was a member. It was one of those ones where you had to be vouched for, like a golf club, and you pay a fee. So my father would take us every once in a while, and they had like a little off to the side. It was like a little woodshed. It was like almost looked like particle board. They created a little woodshed, and they had like 3 or 4 games in it. It was like about 40 feet away from the pool, and inside they had Street Fighter 2. And next to Street Fighter 2, they had the game I went over even for the podcast, Gladiator. The only time I've ever seen the game where it's almost one-on-one fighting, but you're a gladiator walking across from 86. If you have a gladiator machine out there, it's probably worth money because I've only seen it in the little fucking woodshed at pool club. And I played Street Fighter 2 there, and that was the first time I ever I was like, wow, I feel cool. I beat like 4 people in a row. I beat these older kids there. I never forget that. I felt like I'm the man. It was either 91. It might have been early 92 because I don't remember if it was the very first time I played it or I seen it somewhere else, but I still didn't know the special moves, I think, yet. But I was still beating the other people. And they were like older kids, so I was intimidated. I was like, I'm like, 11-year-old, thick but quick Pat. I'm getting, I'm not quite small, but 11, probably 11 and a half. And these other kids are, trying to beat me, the 14-year-olds, and I did okay for myself. I don't remember if I used Ryu or not. If I went cheap and used Chun-Li, because Chun-Li is easy to use if you're a beginner because she's so fast. But anyway, I did okay for myself. I might have used Chun-Li. Might have been Chun-Li. I beat up a blonde-haired kid. He was probably named Kevin. He looked like a Kevin.
Looked like a Kevin.
He looked like Kevin. I remember beating him, probably in front of his girlfriend and embarrassing him. Little thick, chunky kid beats him at Street Fighter 2. Obviously, the legacy of Street Fighter lives to this day. We've had 5 main games and 1 billion iterations in between.
Yeah, couldn't possibly count the iterations.
Alpha 0, Alpha 2.
I would definitely forget something.
It took me 15 years to realize the alphas were prequels. I had no idea. I was like, what does that mean? So like the alphas were like the original Street Fighter time, basically, but a better version of that game. I didn't realize that. It was basically a remake.
Yeah.
Street Fighter Alpha, right? Of the original. Because some of the characters show up from the original Street Fighter.
Some of the characters
like the ninja
up,
guy
yes.
and the guy in England with the baton and shit. I know my Street Fighter lore a little bit. Who's your favorite Street Fighter 2 character?
Chun-Li.
Oh, really?
Chun-Li and
Those
Guile.
thighs, thick thighs?
Chun-Li and Guile are my two favorites.
You like Guile? Mm-hmm. I never liked using Guile. He's the one I never liked using. My cousin liked using Guile because you can set up, if you set up the sonic boom, obviously you crouch for the flash kick. That's a good combo.
Yeah.
And the backbreaker, the backbreaker in the air is the best fucking move ever. It's like so hard to do, but when you pull it off.
Oh, the air throw? Yeah, it's great.
Oh, the backbreaker. There's an air throw and the backbreaker. Use the middle kick to do the backbreaker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to pull off, but they were doing things and obviously that actually a lot of games didn't do those things for a long time like that, air throws and air attacks like that. Not for a while they brought.
Well, not as a consistent system, no.
Because Guile was the only one that did that in that first game. I did the air attack like that, the air throws, I believe.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Did Zangief do that? No. Zangief could bite you though, but that was weird to pull that off. Anyway, so happy birthday to Street Fighter 2. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I bought it at Capcom World when it came out on the Super Nintendo. It was at $93 when it was $80 at Capcom World.
Yeah, I remember.
No, it came out 92.
Those games were expensive. That's one of the games I always use when people talk about the price of games where they've magically forgotten. Street Fighter 2 was $80.
A lot of those Super Nintendo games were.
Yep.
Was it also that much money in the Toys R Us?
Probably, I would imagine.
And the price probably came down over a year or so, but
yeah. And I mean, and then they did the Turbo, and that was an expensive game too.
See, I don't remember by then because I didn't have that. I just had the original. I was off to my PC gaming by then. Pat was off, away from consoles. Any other thoughts on Street Fighter 2?
No, but I'm happy it's out there.
I'm not sure how Mike Tyson never sued him over the M. Bison character. They changed the name, but it was Mike Tyson. It was Mike Tyson.
Yeah, but
That's Balrog.
They changed it in the U.S.
Mike doesn't seem litigious. He didn't care. He was in prison. That's right. I forgot. He was in prison. He couldn't sue. Yeah. I think.